Why do some people achieve so much while others barely get by? The answer lies in their daily habits. In this video, I'll reveal the power habits that can transform your life. Hit subscribe. It's free for you, and it inspires me to make more life-changing videos.
Chapter 1. The Habit Loop. How Habits Work. Most people don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because their invisible habits run the show. Think about the last time you promised yourself a fresh start. Maybe you bought the gym membership, downloaded the budgeting app, or told yourself, this time I'll stay consistent. A week later, you were back where you started. The excitement faded, the willpower drained, and you whispered that dangerous phrase, I'll try again later. The truth is, your problem was never motivation. Motivation is just the spark. What determines whether the fire keeps burning is the system, the hidden loops running in your brain. What if you could design your life so that success becomes automatic? This chapter gives you that system. By the end, you'll see discipline not as punishment, but as design. Eugene Poley was 71 years old when a virus attacked his brain and destroyed the region where memory lived. He couldn't recall new information. Each morning, he'd ask the same questions about who was president, then forget the answers within minutes. If you asked him to describe the layout of his home, he couldn't do it. And yet, something astonishing happened. Eugene could open the front door, walk around the block, and return safely. He couldn't explain how. He didn't even remember leaving. But his body knew. It wasn't memory guiding him, it was habit. Scientists studying Eugene discovered that even when conscious thought vanished, the brain still ran patterns. Cue, routine, reward. A loop buried deep in the mind. Eugene's story proves a truth most of us overlook. Much of what we do every day is not choice, it's habit. Discipline is not forcing yourself. Discipline is designing yourself. For years, we've been told willpower is the key. Push harder, try more, resist temptation. But willpower is like your phone battery. It drains fast. Systems, however, are the charger. They reset, refuel, and run without demanding energy each time. Habits are systems. Once installed, they run on autopilot, quietly shaping our lives while our conscious mind is distracted elsewhere. Here's the framework. First, every habit begins with a cue, something that triggers your brain to shift into autopilot. For Eugene, it was walking past the door. For you, it might be the smell of coffee in the morning or the ping of a notification. Next comes the routine, the behavior itself. This can be physical, like driving a route, mental, like worrying, or emotional, like reacting with anger. Finally comes the reward, the satisfaction your brain receives, even if you don't notice it. That reward teaches your brain to repeat the cycle next time the cue appears. Cue, routine, reward. Over time, this loop becomes automatic. Think about your morning. Do you tie your left shoe first or your right? Do you brush before or after the shower? You probably can't answer because habits handle those details for you. That's the power and the danger. Because the brain doesn't distinguish between good habits and bad habits. It just runs the loop. Smoking and running both obey the same rule. So the question becomes, which loops are you allowing to run your life? Here's the application. If you want to change, don't attack willpower. Look for the loop. Identify the cue, rewrite the routine, and keep the reward. A smoker who lights up when stressed isn't addicted to cigarettes alone. They're addicted to the loop of stress relief. Replace the cigarette with deep breathing, a short walk, or gum, and keep the sense of calm as the reward. The brain will accept the new routine if the loop stays intact. This is why fad diets fail. They ignore the loop and rely on raw willpower. Systems succeed where willpower fails. But here's the twist. Habits never truly disappear. They hide, waiting for the right cue. That's why one drink can trigger years of sobriety to crumble, or why someone returning to an old environment feels cravings resurface. Habits are like tracks in the snow. You can lay new tracks, but the old ones remain beneath. That's not a curse. It's a chance. If you can build destructive habits, you can build liberating ones. How does this apply to your life? Imagine you want to exercise. Instead of demanding endless willpower, design a loop. Cue: set your running shoes by the bed. Routine: put them on and step outside, even for only 5 minutes. Reward: a small treat afterward. Coffee, music, or simply the pride of checking the box. Over time, your brain won't need to bargain. The loop takes over. Soon, running becomes as automatic as brushing your teeth. Businesses have long understood this principle. Coffee chains know that the smell of roasted beans works as a cue. Retailers study subtle shopping patterns to predict needs before customers articulate them. Even household products like toothpaste became essentials not because of necessity alone, but because marketers linked them to cues and rewards so deeply that brushing became non-negotiable. Once you see the loop, you realize much of daily life runs on these invisible tracks. The question is whether you'll keep letting others design them or take control yourself. Systems succeed where willpower fails. So here's your action step. Tonight, set out your clothes for tomorrow before bed. That tiny design is your first system. You'll wake up with one less decision, one less drain on willpower. It's proof that you can create discipline. Every giant change begins with a tiny choice. Make yours today, because in the next chapter, we'll uncover the craving brain and how desire itself can be engineered to serve you instead of sabotage you.
Chapter 2: The Craving Brain: How to Create New Habits. Most people think they fail because they don't want it badly enough. But craving, that deep itch in the brain, is not the problem. The real problem is misunderstanding how craving works. Think about the last time you felt pulled towards something you didn't even plan for. The sudden urge to check your phone, the irresistible call of a snack late at night, the impulse to buy something you didn't need. You didn't choose it. It chose you. The truth is, desire isn't random. It's engineered by loops that your brain has rehearsed over and over. What if you could flip that mechanism so the same force that sabotages you could drive you forward? This chapter reveals how craving is the engine that powers every habit and how to use it instead of being used by it. In the 1990s, researchers at MIT ran experiments with lab rats. They placed the animals in mazes with chocolate waiting at the end. At first, the rats wandered aimlessly, but as they repeated the exercise, their brains showed something striking: a spike of activity not when they ate the chocolate, but when they anticipated it. The craving came before the reward. This anticipation was what drove them to run faster, straighter, with less thought. Over time, the cue, the click of the maze gate, created the craving, and the craving pulled the rats through the routine. It wasn't the chocolate itself that cemented the habit. It was the brain's longing for it. The same loop plays out in human life. Think of sports fans filling stadiums. They don't just love the final score. They crave the suspense before a touchdown or a goal. Think of smokers lighting up. It's not just the nicotine buzz. It's the relief they expect before the first drag. Craving is the hidden force that transforms a simple routine into an unbreakable pattern. Without craving, habits fade. With craving, they become magnetic. Here's the principle. Habits form when a cue not only signals a routine, but awakens a craving for the reward. Willpower alone can't sustain change. Craving can. That's why people keep brushing their teeth, not because dental hygiene suddenly became exciting, but because toothpaste companies created foam and freshness that people began to crave. That minty tingle was the signal of clean,
and soon people didn't feel right without it. One simple craving reshaped an entire culture's hygiene. So how can you use this for yourself? Step 1 is identify the craving that fuels your current routines. Maybe you think you crave sugar, but what you really crave is a burst of energy in the afternoon. Maybe you think you crave scrolling online, but the deeper craving is distraction from stress. Step 2 is attach that craving to a new routine. If you crave energy, swap candy for a short walk or a glass of water. If you crave distraction, use a quick stretch or a conversation instead of a screen. The cue stays, the craving stays, but the routine shifts. Step 3 is amplify the reward, so your brain feels satisfied. Celebrate the new routine even in a small way until your mind starts anticipating it as eagerly as the old one. Habits are built by the craving engine. But here's the surprise. Cravings can be manufactured. Marketers know it. That's why we salivate at the sight of fast food logos or feel restless when our phones buzz. Entire industries thrive on teaching our brains to crave cues we never asked for. If craving can be planted from the outside, it can be planted from the inside too. You can teach yourself to crave a jog, a study session, a glass of water. You don't start by loving the routine. You start by attaching it to a craving your brain already respects. Systems fail when they ignore craving. Systems succeed when they harness it. Imagine waking up and craving the clarity of a morning run the way you crave coffee. Imagine craving the calm of meditation the way you crave scrolling through feeds. These shifts sound dramatic, but they're simply rewiring the loop. Cue, craving, routine, reward. Tonight, test it yourself. Pick one craving you already feel, maybe comfort after work. Instead of numbing with television, attach that craving to a new routine. 10 minutes of music while stretching. Keep the reward of relaxation. Repeat it for a week. You'll feel the craving move from the old loop to the new. That's the moment you realize desire doesn't just trap you. It frees you once you know how to direct it. Every craving is a lever. Use it well, and you can build habits that pull you toward the life you want. Because in the next chapter, we'll uncover the golden rule of habit change, why transformation doesn't just happen, but spreads like fire once you learn the pattern.
Chapter 3. The Golden Rule of Habit Change. Why Transformation Occurs. Most people believe breaking a bad habit is about cutting it out completely, like yanking weeds from the garden. But habits don't vanish. They hide, waiting for the right trigger. That's why so many diets collapse, why addictions return after years of silence, why stress drags us back to old routines we swore were gone. The truth is, you can't erase a habit, but you can rewire it. What if you didn't have to fight your habits, but could redirect their energy into something new? That's the golden rule of habit change, and once you grasp it, transformation becomes possible. Consider Bill Wilson, the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous. In the 1930s, he was a hopeless alcoholic, cycling through binges and breakdowns. Doctors warned him he would die if he didn't stop. Nothing worked, not willpower, not shame, not threats. Then he discovered a different approach. Instead of erasing drinking, replace the routine. AA doesn't demand that members destroy the craving for alcohol. It gives them new routines, meetings, sponsors, prayers that answer the same cues of stress, loneliness, or celebration, but with different actions. The reward remains relief and belonging, but the destructive routine is swapped. Millions have stayed sober because of this principle. You can't extinguish a habit, but you can change the routine inside the loop.
The brain always keeps the cue and the reward. That's why cravings feel so powerful. Smokers crave relaxation. Gamblers crave the rush of risk. Overeaters crave comfort. These rewards don't vanish. The cue, stress, boredom, excitement also remains. What can change is the routine in the middle. Instead of smoking when stressed, someone can run. Instead of gambling to feel alive, someone can volunteer, chase challenges, or create. The loop stays intact, but the middle rewires. Think of Tony Dungy, the NFL coach who transformed the Tampa Bay Buccaneers from a struggling franchise to contenders. His strategy wasn't more complex plays. It was simpler routines. He trained players to respond automatically to specific cues, a shift in an opponent's stance, a signal in their eyes, with pre-programmed moves. Over and over, he drilled them until the reaction was habit. He didn't try to erase old instincts, he replaced them with new ones. The result was a team that didn't overthink under pressure. They just executed, almost unconsciously. The lesson is clear. Success is not about suppressing habits, but reshaping them. Discipline is not about saying no endlessly. Discipline is about saying yes to new routines that serve the same craving. Think of willpower like a brittle shield. It cracks under enough pressure. But habit loops are flexible wires. Redirect them, and they can power a different machine entirely. Here's the framework. Step 1. Identify the cue. Stress at work, boredom at night, celebration with friends. Step 2. Recognize the reward. Relief, connection, stimulation. Step 3. Experiment with new routines that satisfy the same reward. If stress drives you to snack, try walking, journaling, or talking. If boredom drives you to scroll, try music, puzzles, or learning something small. If celebration drives you to drink, try rewarding yourself with food, friends, or experiences. Over time, the brain accepts the new path because the craving still feels met. But here's the challenge. Belief matters. Research shows that change sticks when people believe it's possible. That's why communities like AA work. They surround people with belief. Belief doesn't erase the old loop, but it gives strength when willpower falters. Belief is the glue that locks the new routine in place. Look closely at your life. Which routines are poisoning you? Which ones could be redirected? Tonight, take one loop and run the experiment. Keep the cue, keep the reward, change the routine. If stress makes you scroll endlessly, replace it with a quick journal entry or a walk. If exhaustion drives you to junk food, replace it with a shower or a stretch. Try it once, then repeat. Soon, the new loop begins to feel just as automatic as the old one. Transformation isn't magic, it's mechanics. You're not destroying yourself when you fail at habits. You're fighting your wiring. The golden rule says, don't fight, rewire. And once you learn to do it once, you realize you can do it anywhere. In your health, your relationships, your work, your purpose. Every habit holds energy. Redirect it, and you redirect your life. Because in the next chapter, we'll see how this principle not only changes individuals, it changes organizations. One habit can be the keystone that reshapes everything around it.
Chapter 4. Keystone Habits, or The Ballad of Paul O'Neill. Which habits matter most?
Most people try to change too much at once. Eat better, exercise, save more, work harder. The list grows until it collapses under its own weight. But not all habits are equal. Some matter more. These are keystone habits, patterns that spark ripple effects, reshaping other behaviors automatically. What if instead of tackling everything, you focused on just one lever that quietly shifted the rest? In 1987, Alcoa, the aluminum giant, was stagnating. Investors expected a speech about profits and growth when Paul O'Neill became CEO. Instead, he stunned them. "I want to make Alcoa the safest company in America," he said. Wall Street panicked. Safety sounded irrelevant to money, but Paul O'Neill knew better. Safety would demand better communication, faster reporting, stronger systems, and constant improvement. To make plants safer, managers had to solve inefficiencies, train workers, and design smarter processes. Safety became the culture, and profits soared. Within a year, Alcoa's income broke records. Over his tenure, the company's market value multiplied fivefold, all because of one keystone habit. Keystone habits matter because they create chain reactions. Exercise is a powerful example. People who start working out regularly don't just get fitter. They sleep better, eat differently, manage stress more effectively, and become more productive. The ripple is unconscious. One decision reshapes identity, and that identity fuels other choices. "I'm a runner," or "I'm disciplined," becomes part of how they see themselves, and actions align. Not every habit holds this power. Keystone habits stand out because they influence other routines, shift self-perception, and alter group norms. They matter beyond themselves. Family dinners are another case. Research shows that children who eat with their families regularly are less likely to engage in risky behavior, perform academically better, and report stronger emotional health. The dinner table is just a meal, but it cascades into values, communication, and connection. Here's how to identify one. Step 1. Look for habits that spark identity shifts. Exercise, journaling, saving money, all of these reshape how people think of themselves. Step 2. Find habits that trigger other positive actions. Cooking at home encourages budgeting and healthier eating. Planning your day each morning encourages productivity and focus. Step 3. Notice habits that rewire systems around you. At Alcoa, safety wasn't just a priority, it became the framework for decision-making across the company. The power of a keystone habit isn't in the act itself, but in the story it builds. At Alcoa, workers began to see themselves as part of the safest company in America. That identity created pride, consistency, and excellence. In personal life, someone who starts exercising soon sees themselves as someone who values health. That identity holds, even when motivation falters. Which keystone habit could reshape your life? It might be committing to a daily workout, not for fitness alone, but because it rewires discipline everywhere. It might be journaling, which clarifies decisions and reduces stress. It might be a financial keystone, like tracking spending, which ripples into saving and smarter choices. Start small. Lay out your running shoes tonight. Cook one meal at home. Write down tomorrow's top priority before bed. These are small acts with big leverage. Keystone habits matter because they shift the gravity of your life. You don't need to change everything. You just need to find the habit that changes everything else. Because in the next chapter, you'll see how organizations like Starbucks build willpower into a habit, training people to turn discipline into something automatic.
Chapter 5. Starbucks and the Habit of Success. When willpower becomes automatic. Most people think willpower is something you either have or you don't. Some people are disciplined, others aren't. But the truth is, willpower is a habit, not a fixed trait. It's something you can build, practice, and strengthen until it becomes automatic. What if instead of draining yourself with self-control every day, you trained willpower to run on autopilot?
Starbucks built its empire not just on coffee, but on teaching employees habits of willpower. Many baristas are young, often working their first job. The pressure is real. Impatient customers, rush hour lines, machines breaking down. Instead of telling workers just stay calm, Starbucks trained them with routines. Employees learn to anticipate stressful moments and respond with rehearsed behaviors, smiling, breathing, asking for help. These weren't random reactions. They were carefully practiced scripts that turned stress into discipline. By drilling these responses, willpower became automatic. Psychologists discovered the same principle in studies. In one experiment, students were given radishes to eat, while fresh cookies sat nearby. Those who resisted cookies quickly lost focus on later tasks. Their willpower had drained. But when people practiced routines that conserved energy, setting plans in advance, building habits of preparation, they lasted longer. Willpower wasn't magic, it was muscle. And muscles can be trained. The key is recognizing that willpower drains when we rely on raw resistance. But when responses become habits, the strain disappears. This is why people who pre-commit to routines, laying out clothes for exercise, prepping healthy meals, scheduling work, succeed more often. They don't fight temptation in the moment. The decision is already made. Starbucks' system shows how organizations can embed this into culture. Workers weren't asked to summon willpower on command. They were given cue, routine, reward loops to follow. Cue, a stressful customer. Routine, use the plan, breathe, listen, respond politely. Reward, pride, praise, calm. Over time, baristas didn't have to think about controlling themselves. The loop ran for them. And once willpower becomes habit, success scales. Here's how you apply it. Step 1. Notice where you most often lose control. Is it eating late at night? Skipping workouts? Getting distracted? Step 2. Build an if-then plan. If I feel the urge to snack, then I'll drink water first. If I feel distracted, then I'll set a timer for 5 minutes. If I feel exhausted, then I'll start with 5 minutes instead of quitting. These tiny systems conserve energy and build discipline. Willpower isn't endless, but it can be multiplied when baked into habits. A soldier doesn't think about courage in battle. Training kicks in. A pilot under pressure doesn't rely on raw focus. Checklists guide every move. The same principle works in daily life. Systems of habit protect willpower. Think of one situation where you consistently stumble. Maybe it's stress at work. Maybe it's procrastination at home. Write down a plan. Practice it until it feels natural. The first time, it might feel forced. By the 10th time, it feels normal. By the 100th time, it's automatic. That's how willpower becomes less about fighting yourself and more about trusting the habits you've built. So, here's your action step. Tonight, write down one if-then routine for tomorrow. If stress appears, then I'll pause and breathe. If distraction appears, then I'll silence notifications. If exhaustion appears, then I'll start with 5 minutes instead of quitting. These tiny systems conserve energy and build discipline. Willpower isn't a gift, it's a design. And once it's designed into habit, it can carry you through anything. because in the next chapter, we'll see how leaders transform organizations by teaching new habits at scale, turning companies into machines of change.
Chapter 6: The Power of a Crisis. How Leaders Create Habits Through Accident and Design. Most organizations wait until disaster strikes before they change. But here's the truth. Crisis is the perfect moment to build new habits. When everything feels uncertain, people are open to rewriting routines they would otherwise defend fiercely. Leaders who understand this don't just solve emergencies, they reshape cultures. What if instead of fearing crises, you saw them as the doorway to transformation? Take Rhode Island Hospital in the early 2000s. It was respected, but inside its walls, doctors and nurses clashed constantly. Communication broke down, mistakes multiplied, and patients suffered. Then a crisis struck. A surgeon operated on the wrong side of a patient's head. Public outrage exploded. The hospital could have hidden, but instead, leadership seized the moment. They installed new checklists, forced teams to pause before surgeries, and required every voice in the room to count, no matter the hierarchy. Slowly, the culture changed. The crisis cracked open the door, and new habits filled the gap. Crisis works because it disrupts the status quo. In stable times, routines feel safe. People resist altering them. But when a system is shaken, old habits lose their grip. That's the moment when leaders can introduce fresh cues and routines, ones that rebuild trust and performance. Once repeated, these new habits take root and define the culture long after the crisis fades. Consider Paul O'Neill again at Alcoa. While his focus on safety became legendary, it was crises, accidents, and fatalities that gave him the leverage to demand change. Each tragedy forced managers to confront uncomfortable truths. Each incident created urgency. And each time, O'Neill used the moment to reinforce the keystone habit of safety. Over time, crises didn't just spur change, they strengthened the culture. Here's the framework. Step 1, recognize the window. A crisis shatters certainty, creating space for new routines. Step 2, act fast. Don't let the organization slip back into old patterns. Introduce the new habit immediately while minds are open. Step 3, tie the habit to values people already believe in: safety, trust, respect, excellence. Step 4, repeat until the new routine becomes the default. The lesson isn't only for companies. Personal crises open the same doors. A health scare prompts someone to exercise for the first time. A financial shock forces someone to budget. A relationship breakdown makes someone rethink how they communicate. These moments hurt, but they also carry power. If you anchor new habits to them, the transformation can last for years. So ask yourself, what crisis have you faced that could become a turning point? Instead of seeing it only as pain, see it as the signal for a new loop. If stress collapsed your health, let it be the cue for a morning walk. If debt overwhelmed you, let it be the cue for a daily budget ritual. If burnout consumed you, let it be the cue for setting boundaries. The moment of collapse can become the foundation of change. Crises don't just test leaders, they reveal them. Because the ones who use crisis to design new habits build organizations and lives that come back stronger than before. So here's your action step. Write down one crisis or setback you faced. Identify what habit could have prevented it, or what new habit could grow from it. Take one step to install that habit now while the lesson is fresh.
Every crisis is both danger and opportunity. Use it well, and it becomes the birthplace of transformation. Because in the next chapter, we'll see how companies like Target harness data to predict habits, sometimes even before people know them themselves. Chapter 7. How Target knows what you want before you do. When companies predict habits. Most people think their choices are private. They imagine walking through a store, picking what they like, and leaving. But behind the scenes, every purchase leaves a trail. Companies study these trails until they can predict not just what you'll buy, but when your life will change. Habits are patterns, and patterns can be tracked. What if businesses know your routines better than you do? Target became famous for this. In the early 2000s, they hired statisticians to study shopping data. One researcher, Andrew Pohl, was asked a bold question. Can we figure out which customers are pregnant even before they tell us? Pregnancy is a golden moment for retailers because expectant parents form new shopping habits that last for years. If a store can capture those habits early, it can win loyalty for a lifetime. Pohl studied hundreds of purchase histories and discovered clues: unscented lotion, vitamins, cotton balls, certain soaps. Alone, they looked harmless. Together, they screamed pregnancy. Using these patterns, Target sent ads for baby products to women before many had told friends or family. One father even stormed into a store, furious that his teenage daughter was being targeted, only to discover later that she was, in fact, expecting. This wasn't magic. It was the science of habit prediction. Every swipe of a loyalty card, every online order, every digital click tells companies something about the cues, routines, and rewards shaping your life. They don't need to guess your secrets. They just follow the patterns. Why does this matter? Because it proves how visible habits become once tracked. If a corporation can decode your cravings and routines, you can too. Your data is a mirror showing what you repeatedly do. Instead of ignoring it, you can use it. Want to understand yourself? Look at your receipts, your calendar, your screen time. The truth is already there. But businesses also understand something else. People resist being told their habits are predictable. That's why Target disguised its baby ads among random coupons. They learned that if people feel manipulated, they reject the message. So instead, they mixed diapers and bottles with ads for lawnmowers and wine. Customers thought it was coincidence, when in fact, it was precision. Habits can be influenced, but only when people feel they still have choice. Here's the framework for personal application. Step 1. Track your own patterns. Write down when and why you eat, shop, or scroll. Step 2. Notice the hidden cues. Do you snack at the same hour every day? Do you check your phone when anxious? Step 3. Ask what reward you're chasing. Comfort? Escape? Energy? Step 4. Design a replacement routine that meets the same craving. Step 5. Repeat until it feels natural. The same science that helps retailers predict behavior can help you predict yourself. If data shows you what's coming, you can shape it. Instead of being a passenger to your cravings, you become the driver. So here's your action step. Choose one area of your life, food, money, or time, and log it for a week. Write down every purchase, snack, or scroll. At the end, circle the patterns. You'll be surprised how quickly your future becomes predictable. And once it's predictable, it's changeable. Your habits are visible whether you notice them or not. Companies already use this truth. The question is, will you? Because in the next chapter, we'll see how movements, from civil rights to church growth, use the same science of habits to spread across entire societies.
Chapter 8. Saddleback Church and the Montgomery Bus Boycott. How Movements Grow. Most people believe movements are born from extraordinary leaders or one explosive moment that forces history to change. The truth is quieter and more powerful. Social revolutions grow because of habits. They are fueled by the invisible routines of friendship, community, and shared identity. Habits don't just guide individuals or shape corporations. They bind people together into patterns strong enough to challenge entire systems. What if the same loops that make you brush your teeth or check your phone could also explain why societies rise and transform? Think back to Montgomery, Alabama in 1955. Rosa Parks boarded a bus after a long day of work. When asked to give up her seat, she refused. She wasn't the first to resist segregation. Many others had done the same. But her arrest ignited something larger. Why? Because Rosa Parks wasn't just any passenger. She was deeply connected within her community. She was active in her church, respected in local organizations, and trusted by friends and neighbors. Her decision didn't just symbolize defiance, it triggered loyalty. People who knew her through everyday routines, Sunday services, neighborhood gatherings, women's clubs, felt a personal obligation to respond. They boycotted buses not simply because segregation was wrong, but because Rosa Parks was one of them. This is the hidden power of habits. They transform private choices into collective action. The Montgomery bus boycott lasted 381 days. Think about that. More than a year of walking to work, carpooling, enduring cold and rain. It wasn't raw passion that carried people for so long. Passion burns hot, but fades quickly. What sustained the movement was habit. People developed routines of car sharing, prayer meetings, and nightly gatherings. These rituals became anchors that turned sacrifice into something normal, almost automatic. And because those habits connected thousands of individuals, the boycott held firm until segregation laws collapsed. Now look at Saddleback Church in California. Rick Warren didn't build one of the largest congregations in the United States on sermons alone. He built it on habits. Warren realized people didn't just need inspiration once a week. They needed connection woven into their daily lives. So he focused on small groups. These groups met weekly in homes, sharing meals, studying together, and supporting one another. The act of gathering became routine, a habit of belonging. Over time, members no longer saw themselves just as attendees of a Sunday service. They became part of a living network of relationships. That identity drew in friends of friends, neighbors of neighbors, until Saddleback grew from a small circle into tens of thousands. The lesson is clear. Movements follow a pattern. They begin with habits of friendship, the loyalty that compels people to act when someone they know takes a stand. They expand through habits of community, routines that spread across wider networks, linking strangers through shared actions. And they endure because habits of belief, rituals and stories that give meaning and identity, turning individual commitment into collective destiny. Without habits, movements collapse after the first rush of excitement. With habits, they spread like wildfire.
This pattern appears everywhere, in the civil rights movement, in political campaigns, in religious revivals, even in neighborhood initiatives. People come for the cause, but they stay because the routines give them structure. Here's the framework. If you want to grow a movement, or even just build a stronger community, focus less on the single moment of inspiration and more on the system of repetition. Step 1. Anchor the cause in relationships people already value. Step 2. Create small, consistent routines that people can repeat without effort. Weekly meetings, shared meals, group rituals. Step 3. Tie those routines to a larger story that explains why they matter. Step 4. Let the story spread through networks until it becomes an identity. When people see themselves not just as participants, but as members of something larger, the movement becomes unshakable. Think about your own life. If you want to spread an idea, whether it's health, kindness, learning, or service, don't start by trying to convince strangers. Start with the friends and colleagues you already see. Build a habit of meeting, acting, or sharing. Then connect those habits to a bigger vision. Slowly, the ripples widen. What feels like a small circle today can become a wave tomorrow. So here's your action step. Pick one cause or value that matters to you. Invite 2 people you trust to practice it with you once a week. Keep it simple: a shared workout, a meal, a reading session, or volunteering together. Do it consistently. Over time, that circle will grow, because habits are contagious. Movements aren't built on speeches alone. They are built on habits multiplied across thousands of lives. Rosa Parks sparked a flame, but it was the habits of her community that carried it for over a year. Rick Warren preached faith, but it was the weekly small groups that made it real. Movements endure because habits endure. And in the final chapter, we'll see the ultimate truth. The habits you choose don't just shape your personal life or your community. They ripple outward, influencing entire societies and deciding what kind of world we all live in.
Chapter 9. The Neurology of Free Will. Are we responsible for our habits? Most people believe they are fully in control of their choices. They think every action is deliberate, guided by conscious decision. But neuroscience tells a more complicated story. Many of the things we do every day, from brushing our teeth to checking our phones to eating when we're not hungry, are not choices in the moment. They're habits, patterns wired so deeply into the brain that they unfold automatically. This raises a haunting question. If habits run so much of our lives, how much responsibility do we really have for them? And if habits can push us toward destruction, can we ever truly be free? Take the story of Brian Thomas in Wales. In 2009, he strangled his wife while he slept. When he woke, horrified, he called the police himself. It turned out he suffered from a rare sleep disorder. His brain had triggered violence in an unconscious loop. In court, he was acquitted because doctors proved he hadn't acted with conscious intent. His brain acted, but he didn't. Now contrast this with another story, that of a man named Angie Bachmann, who developed a gambling addiction. Casinos knew her patterns. They tracked her bets, offered her free trips, extended credit. Eventually, she lost everything, including her home. When creditors came calling, she argued it wasn't her fault. The casinos exploited her habits. The courts disagreed. They ruled she was responsible for her choices, even though those choices were clearly driven by compulsive loops. 2 stories, 2 very different judgments. The science of habit reveals why this conflict exists. Habits form in the basal ganglia,
a deep part of the brain that operates below conscious thought. Once a habit loop is created, cue, routine, reward, the brain conserves energy by running it automatically. This is why you can drive home without remembering the trip, or eat a snack without realizing you opened the bag. But here's the nuance. While habits are powerful, they are not destiny. We may not control the first impulse, but we can design the systems around those impulses. We may not erase the craving, but we can redirect the routine. Responsibility lies not in erasing habits instantly, but in how we respond once we recognize them. Angie Bachmann lost because the court believed she could have put safeguards in place, like self-bans from casinos or seeking treatment, even if her cravings were strong. Habits excuse nothing, but they explain much. They remind us that change doesn't come from raw willpower, but from deliberate rewiring. Here's the framework. Step 1. Acknowledge the automatic nature of habits. Don't confuse them with conscious failure. Step 2. Identify the cues that drive them. Step 3. Experiment with replacement routines. Step 4. Build belief through community and repetition. In short, you are not free from your habits, but you are free to reshape them. This final truth is both sobering and empowering. Sobering because habits can enslave us, pulling us into cycles we never intended. Empowering because once you see the loop, you gain the ability to rewrite it. Responsibility isn't about pretending you control everything in the moment. It's about owning the process of change. Think about your own life. Where do you feel trapped? Is it procrastination, overeating, overspending, or distraction? Remember, the first craving may not be your fault, but the design of the system around it can be your choice. You can build structures, accountability, routines, communities that turn destructive loops into constructive ones. So here's your action step. Tonight, write down one habit you feel least in control of. Instead of blaming yourself, study it. What's the cue? What's the reward? What replacement routine could meet that craving? Tomorrow, test it once. You don't have to break free in a day. You just have to begin the redesign. The neurology of free will teaches us a profound lesson. You are shaped by your habits, but you are not imprisoned by them. The question is not whether habits control you. The question is whether you will take responsibility for shaping the ones that define your future. Because in the end, your habits are your life. Change them, and you change everything.